there. So thank you for tuning in to part 3 of the video. And I just wanted to go over, like I said, some of the passages in The Power of the Myth by Joseph Campbell. I just happened to be reading this book at this time, and I don't think it's a coincidence that I was reading the chapter called Sacrifice and Bliss. And it brings some really effective mythological and archetypal understanding of myths that are happening right now on the planet during these huge astrological transits. So, he talks about, generally speaking in this chapter, the idea of us as individuals sacrificing our lives for our brothers or sisters, and how in that moment of trying to help your brother or sister and risking your own life doing so is a state of euphoria or bliss, as he puts it. And he brings in some really amazing examples that can help us understand this astrological transit at this time. So he gives us an example of an individual who has done this. So it says here, later, a newspaper reporter asked him, "Why did you let it go? Why would have you been killed?" And his reporter answer was, "I couldn't let it go. If I had let that young man go, I couldn't have lived another day in my life. How come?" And then he goes on to say, Schopenhauer's answer to such a psychological crisis represents the breakthrough of a metaphysical realization, which is that you and the other are one, that you are two aspects of one life, and that your apparent separateness is but an effect of the way we experience forms under the conditions of space and time. Our true reality is our identity and unity with all of life. This is a metaphysical truth, which may become spontaneously realized under such circumstances of crisis. For it is, according to Schopenhauer, the truth of your life. The hero is the one who has given his physical life to some order of this realization of that truth. The concept of love your neighbor is to put you in. And as I was saying, the hero is the one who has given his physical life to some order of realization of that truth. The concept of love your neighbor is to put you in tune with this fact. And he goes on to say, so when Jesus says, love thy neighbor as thyself, he is saying in effect, love thy neighbor because he is yourself. And so he goes on to say further examples of how individuals on the planet are risking their lives to save and help others. So this is a huge theme that is coming up on the planet right now with all these tragedies that are happening. And in effect, it's actually a form of awakening to this realization that we are not in duality, we are not separate from each other, but we are in fact all connected. And so he has an example of soldiers. During the Vietnam War, I remember seeing on the television young men in helicopters going out to rescue one or another of their companions at great risk to themselves. They didn't have to rescue that greatly endangered young man. And so there I saw the same thing working, the same willingness of which Schopenhauer wrote, of sacrificing one's own life for another. Men sometimes confess they love war because it puts them in touch with the experience of being alive. And there we have the Pluto in Capricorn and the Equinox theme of rebirth and death coming up. So in going to the office every day, you don't get that experience, but suddenly in war, you're ripped from being back into being alive. And those young men in Vietnam were truly alive in braving deaths for their fellows. So there's another example that he provides about what that truly means to have this sacrifice energy, this Jesus Christ consciousness energy, and this victim Madar syndrome that's being triggered at the new moon. So here's the final passage I wanted to share in The Power of the Myth. He says, the big moment in the medieval myth is the awakening of the heart to compassion, the transformation of passion into compassion. And out of that, you will also get the notion that Abelard offered as an explanation to the crucifixion. So he's discussing a old medieval myth of a king. And he refers it to the crucifixion of Jesus, so that the Son of God came down into the world to be crucified, to awaken our hearts to compassion, and thus to turn our minds from the gross concerns of the raw life of the world to the specifically human values of self-giving into shared suffering. And in that sense, the wounded king, the maimed king of the Grail legend, is the counterpart of Christ. He is there to evoke compassion and thus brings a dead wasteland to life. The one who suffers is, as it were, the Christ, come before us to evoke the one thing that turns the human beast of prey into a valid human being. That one thing is compassion. This is the theme that James Joyce takes over and develops in Ulysses, the awakening of his hero, Stephen Dedalus, the manhood, through the shared compassion with Leopold Bloom. That was the awakening of his heart to love and the opening of the way. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that I was reading The Power of the Myth recently and landed on that chapter, because there is something important in that I needed to share about this energy of sacrifice, which leads us to this euphoric bliss of being actually connected rather than separate and living in duality, but living as a whole collective and oneness with each other on the planet. And so that is a theme that I think is coming up. And finally, I wanted to read a passage by The Circle of Life by Joyce Rupp and Mariana Weidenker. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. But I wanted to read a passage about the equinox, what an equinox represents. What does the autumn season of surrender, and look at this beautiful picture, the season of surrender, what does that actually mean? And here was a beautiful passage that kind of describes what is going on astrologically, what is going on with this new moon, what is going on with the energy right now, what's happening on the planet right now, and what we are really supposed to tune into during an equinox season. And I think that's a really important topic to cover. So, it is harvest time. A sense of completion and accomplishment unwraps the land. Earth invites us to gather her fruits of her womb. So it's almost like Earth, Mother, the Mother Earth, Virgo, which is represented by Earth energy, invites us to gather the fruits of her womb. The fruits, the Christ consciousness energy, the sacrificial energy, and all the benefits that we get, the bliss of being connected with our brothers and sisters. So from soil and vine, from tree and bush, she pours out food to humankind and to creatures of the land. Fields of grain send forth their blessing. Trees laden with the fruits sing sweet songs of nourishment. Vines thick and pumpkins display their beautiful readiness. Grapes and tomatoes generously offer their gifts. Potatoes and peanuts buried in the earth reveal their maturity. In the midst of all this harvesting, how appropriate that we should pause from our labors to celebrate the festival of gratitude, Thanksgiving. Earth is our table. Gratitude turns over our hearts during the fall season, like an old-fashioned plow turning the soil. The mood of autumn is the ebb and flow of life. Autumn stands as the epiphany to the truth that all things are passing, and even in the passing there is beauty. So even in this birthing cycle, there is beauty. It holds out platters of death and life. As the bright colors of the fall fade away and the leaves make their final descent, rich and brown charcoal colors take center stage. This is the decaying season, but the rotting ritual that surrounds us has another face. Compost and mulch are food for the soil. There is much life in the dying. Moments of death are full of life, and our fear of the unknown sometimes hides that life. I think I want to repeat that sentence because it's very deep and it brings a lot of truth forward. Moments of death are full of life, and our fear of the unknown sometimes hides that life. All this dying is a prophecy of life to come. Everything is dying in order to live. So there is such a focus on living. And so that is also the spring equinox that is happening in the southern hemisphere. So this kind of like duality that's happening on the equinox right now, and this division between the north and southern hemisphere is depicting death and life, life and death perfectly, and the cycle of life, which is perfectly depicted in the title of this book. While many people dread the approaching winter season, often the same people claim autumn as their favorite. Perhaps this is something to be a haunting call of the season that turns our eyes toward home. Autumn touches the core of our soul with this wordless message about the necessity of transformation and death. We are gently encouraged to look towards the west and embrace the bittersweet truth that all things are transitory. As we face the painful reality that nothing lasts forever, autumn teaches us humility. We learn to honor the dying. Everything is moving, flowing into something new. In this lovely season, when the dance of surrender is obvious, we find large spaces left where something beautiful once lived. As one by one the leaves go, the precious emptiness appears in the trees. The naked beauty of the branches can be seen. The birds' abandoned nests become visible. The new spaces of emptiness reveals mounted ridges. At night, if you stand beneath the tree and gaze upon stars now peering through the branches, there is an important autumn lesson. When certain things fall away, there are other things that can be seen more clearly. So when certain things fall away, there are other things that can be seen more clearly, which is a huge aspect of the Virgo energy of having clear focus. The same truth can be celebrated in our personal lives. When we are able to let go of a relationship that is not healthy, the heart is given more room to grow. We are able to receive new people in our lives whose gifts we never noticed. These people come to us with our own visions and dreams. If we are receptive, our lives are enriched. Perhaps it is not a person that we have lost, but a dream of good health that would last forever. Our health fails, our dream dies. People often speak of becoming more grateful after having lost some of their health. Suddenly, they see all that they had taken for granted, and gratitude for all that enables them to say yes to all that is to come. So it just goes on to say the importance of surrendering and the importance of gratitude at this time, and the importance of the transformation of the death and the rebirthing cycle that is happening right now. And we even see that in the stars. So overall, I think we do have an energy of really becoming more compassionate for ourselves and for others during any type of cycles that we have going on in our lives. We also have the theme of sacrifice, where there is a certain form of euphoria and bliss that comes when we help other people, and that it tunes us in to our collective consciousness, that we are not separate, but we are actually collectively all whole. And we are all nourished by Mother Nature, by the Divine Mother, the Divine Feminine that's coming through for the equinox season. And finally, the new moon in Virgo and the prophecies that are coming in, I think, really wraps up this video presentation really quite well for those of you who have stayed tuned from the beginning. We finally have this idea of letting go of something old, of letting go of a relationship that may no longer serve us, or certain people, places, or things. And that's why I think Regulus is conjunct with Venus at the new moon, because it's really showing us healthy boundaries in our relationships, whether they be with individuals or with our society, however they may manifest for us. And finally, it talks about our love relationships, the balance of the masculine and feminine being brought into a balance finally, 50% light and dark of day and night happening at the equinox. Why is that important? It's important because it shows us that we are starting a new year, that truly at this time astrologically and on the planet, we are starting a completely new cycle. A rebirthing is happening here. And there may be challenges that come up for us to let go of certain things in order to enter this higher unity consciousness state. And in order to do so, we have to embody the feminine side of ourselves and embody that feminine energy on our planet. And I think that's what's really coming through. And prophetically speaking, I can't say a date that, let's say, something's going to happen. I'm not going to get into that. But what I am going to demystify here, that there is something specific about our calendars. Our concept of space and time is, in fact, our calendar off completely. Is the new year happening right now? Is right now our new year? That's a question that I might want to leave you with to ask yourself what you think about that. And if you want to share your comments below, please do. Are we entering a new year on the planet? A new cycle of humanity? Are we entering a complete new balance in our lives, in how we relate to our environment and to ourselves, about our health? Are we entering a more feminine approach that includes the moon energy, which is the feminine energy with the sun? Do we have to change our calendar to a lunisolar calendar that is based off of the Hebrew calendar that is used in Jewish tradition? Do we have to change our calendar and celebrate, not on Sunday, but celebrate today, September 22nd, or since the new moon, as the Jewish traditions have been celebrating, and even pagan traditions have been celebrating, because they're connected with the moon cycles, with the feminine cycles. So I think a lot of the changes that we may have come up will be related to our perception of time and space, and how we approach what type of calendar and what type of celebrations at what time we are going to be doing them. I think that is what's going to be highlighted, even biblically and prophetically, about what to do moving forward. so that we are truly tuning into the cycle of life, both feminine and masculine, dark, light, day and night. Thank you for all of you tuning in. I hope this helps you on your path, and I wish you lots of love and blessings.